you guys are having some really good ideas, and I hope that as you go forward in your careers someday when you get there and you're teaching, and I hope that this will maybe stick with you, and you can, I was telling this group, you got to stand strong when the rest of your colleagues are sending out packets of homework, and you might now be thinking about, well, what would be a more effective way to meet the goals that I want to meet without sending out all that homework? Well, let me give you some more to think about. The best classrooms, the research would say, not only are characterized by more thinking than remembering, they also have students doing most of the thinking. Now, thinking versus remembering are different, am I right?
Yes.
In fact, this is so funny. I get a magazine called Teaching Children Mathematics. Is that awesome? You guys should subscribe. Really. I'm gonna come in and sell you someday on this whole thing. But anyway, I got it yesterday. I went to pick up my son at football practice. I was reading it in the car, and there was an article about learning basic facts, like adding facts. And what it said was, the research is that they don't just remember stuff that makes no sense. And we have all kinds of evidence of frustrated teachers because kids don't know their basic facts. They don't know their times tables. I mean, I hear that at the college level all the time. All these college students don't know their times tables. And in the article they said because they're just trying to remember these facts as opposed to connecting the meaning and really thinking about it. So the example is, I think I shared one like this with you before. If you had 7 plus 5 was the example we used. Maybe a student would kind of fall back, and then they're thinking about it. They go, well, wait, I'm at 5 plus 5 I got. 5 plus 5 is 10. That's an easy one. I got 2 hands, So what they do is 7 plus 5 is they go 5 plus 5 is 10, but I got 7, so it's 2 more, so it's 12. So quickly, but with thinking rather than just remembering a flashcard, students can more meaningfully generate their result. And so I like this little quote, that we should be thinking about our teaching and say, are we asking students to remember, like play Trivial Pursuit, or are we asking them to think? And as I was putting this together, I was thinking about even our recent experiences in this class. And so on the test, remember the old binary thing, right? So my goal, just in case you weren't aware, my goal was to try to teach you the big idea of place value. And the big idea of place value to me was knowing when you roll over. Knowing when you got to the 5s, you had to roll over to the 5s. When you got 5 5s, that's 25, etc. And so I was trying to really focus on the bigger idea of how do you think about place value. And on the show you had to do 7s. And on the test, we went binary. And I wanted you to think about, all this means is, I've got one single, I have no bundles of 2, 1 bundle of 4, 1 bundle of 8, no bundles of 16, 1 bundle of 32, and you could take that way of thinking and apply it, whether I said there was 2 symbols, or 9 symbols, or 7 symbols, or anything else. And so that was my goal anyway, when I did that. So, as we send homework home, and we're practicing, what are we practicing? Are we practicing a behavior, or are we practicing thinking? Practice leads to habit, which is by definition a mindless repetition of behavior. A habit is just a mindless repetition of behavior. Don't take that as a negative. I mean, there's good habits, right? But we can have a mindless repetition of behavior. That can be a good thing depending on the habit. But not to understanding. Practice does not necessarily lead to understanding. And when understanding is absent, the ability to reuse and apply the skill is very limited. That's why, to me, we have college teachers complain to their students on other times tables because they practiced it, they got a habit, but there was no understanding, and that just didn't carry over from year to year to year. Practice must be connected with understanding. Those students who didn't understand it, whatever the content is, they made up their own ways to do things, which were often wrong. And they repeated that practice, that wrong practice, making it that much harder to get them to see it another way in class. Can you imagine this situation? We were just talking about it at the back table. This happened to me about a year ago. You recognize that picture? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you ever looked really close, but right back there, there's a nice little poster I like. The number of students enrolled at Chandler Gilbert Community College has been growing in recent years. And there's you guys remember your college algebra? Mm-hmm. The number of students at Chandler Gilbert depends on the year that you're talking about, and there's a little formula. If you plug in the year, you can find out how many students were enrolled at Chandler Gilbert. And the variable y is the number of years since 2003. So in my college algebra class, I asked my students to go home, and I just gave them this one problem because I've been thinking about this homework stuff. I said, just go home and do this one problem. C of y equals 900 and solve for y. So, 9,000. So essentially what I told them was, the number of students at Chandler Gilbert was 9,000, figure out what year it was. And I wanted to see them do that. So the next day they come in, and honestly, my get all students do all the homework all the time guaranteed? I'm a fraud. But I get a lot more students to do the homework, because you know how many they have to do? One. And when you don't do that one, I go, come on, Amanda, it was one problem. You tell me you couldn't get one problem done between Monday and Wednesday? That's pretty sad. I make them feel bad, and see if I can make them cry, and then they're going to start doing their homework. But I get a lot more people to do their homework now. But here's what I saw. I walk around the room, and I'm like, all right, what'd you do, what'd you do, what'd you do? And in 5 seconds, I can walk around the room, and I can see, and you know what I saw? I saw a whole bunch of students took 9,000 and plugged it in for y. Because that just felt good. This is a thing in algebra. They like to just take numbers and plug them in, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what I was asking to do. In fact, if you plug 9,000 in for the year, what you're saying is, it's the number of years since 2003. It's 9,000 years after 2003. How many students went to Chandler Gilbert? So I walked around the room, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got like 10 of the 24 people plugged in 9,000 for y. They did it all wrong. Now imagine this. What if instead of the one problem, I gave them one of those worksheets that had 20 of those problems? And all 20 of them, they did it wrong. They did it wrong 20 times. Practice leads to habit. A bad habit. Now, I only had them do it once. And I only have to, for 10 of them, have to undo something they've only done once. And so that previous comment, that had they done it 50 times, and come to class having done it 50 times, then we're in trouble. It says, making it that much harder to get them to see it another way in class. Because they've built a habit, a bad habit. Now, they only did it once. I can correct that much more easily than if they had done it 50 times. The fact that so many children regard homework as something to finish as quickly as possible, or even as a significant source of stress, helps to explain why there's so little evidence that it offers any academic advantage, even for those who obediently sit down and complete their past statement assigned. So the truth of the matter is, you saw a little bit of it in those videos, the truth of the matter is there's very little research that would suggest that the more you do homework, the better you achieve. Because, what are they doing? I can think about my kids. Just fast as they can get that thing done. Or I think about my Matthew, who's now 18 and here, but when he was little, and he got the time test, and the teacher said, as soon as you're done, you can go outside. So he did one problem, turned in, went outside. The teacher calls me and goes, Matt, you just did one problem. I'm like, well, because you told me to go outside. Don't tell me to go outside. So they just do stuff, they get it done as fast as they can. It's not going to lead to learning, and it actually doesn't. You can see now why there's no connection between success and achievement and doing your homework, because they're not really doing it in such a way that helps. In the mid-'80s, an educator named Bill Barber commented that to include more homework on an agenda for educational reform is embarrassing. So here's the truth. A lot of times when people talk about educational reform, what they'll say is, we need to give those kids more homework. That'll fix them. Bill Barber says that's embarrassing. It implies that we are nothing but amateurs if the best we can muster up for students who are dropping out at alarming rates, students who can't read or write, is a recommendation that they ought to get more of the same thing. I don't know if you guys realize, but maybe you do. You're in education, you're taking other classes. We have a crisis, really. Arizona is one of the worst. Dropout rate's very high. Lots of people can't read, can't do math. Doing more homework, that's all we got. Even good teachers end up routinely engaging in bad instruction, lest their kids be unprepared when more bad instruction comes their way. You know why we do this? Prepare them for college or prepare them for high school? Because when they get to high school, they get some really bad instruction. We've got to prepare them for it. When they get to college, it's even going to be worse. We've got to prepare them for it. So we engage sometimes. I know I do. I engage in bad things. I know it's not the best practice, but I do it because I think, I've got to prepare them. I think about my engineering majors all the time, going to ASU. to stop myself and go, wait a minute, am I really doing the best thing for them? A little cartoon I found. Because I think this now, with all this achievement stuff we've been talking about, you guys may have heard some of the international comparisons. You know how the United States falls in mathematics? Like in a study, there's been international studies. In fact, there's an ongoing called TIMSS that 41 countries are involved, and the United States, and well, they do 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. So depending on if you're looking at 4th, 8th, and 12th grade, we have different ranks. But we'll fall in the 12th grade, we'll fall like in the 30s out of 41. And then a lot of people will say, well, but in other countries, it's a different culture and different focus and all this. I'm like, yeah, I agree. But I want to be 38th out of 41. Okay, put us 5. I'll be a number 5. I'm okay with that. I don't have to be number 1. But for crying out loud, it's not like we're competing in the top 10 even. We're like in the 30s out of 41 nations. India being one of the top. But what are those other countries doing? An international comparison by 2 Penn State professors has concluded that junior high students who scored highest in math tended to come from countries where teachers assign relatively little homework, including Denmark, Czech Republic, and Japan. Conversely, the lowest scoring students came from countries where teachers assigned tons of homework: Iran, Thailand, Greece. So, at present, the default policy in almost all schools is to assign homework on a regular basis. That's just what we do. Right? It's blasphemy, the video said. Not doing homework is blasphemy. We just give homework on a regular basis. Giving kids something to take home is the rule. The absence of homework is the exception. What this means, as I pointed out earlier, this is Alfie Kohn again, is that the primary commitment, both logically and chronologically, is to make sure students usually have homework to do at home. Only secondarily do teachers figure out what to make them do. The first thought is, I have to give them homework. I don't know what it is. I can tell you my 24 years now, I can think back to making a syllabus and just kind of like, okay, in section 4.7 in the book, 1, 7, 4, 9, I'll just pick a handful of problems. There's your homework. I haven't even thought about what the problems are. First, I make sure they have homework. Second, I might figure out what the homework is, if at all. This default only makes sense if homework itself, the very fact of doing it, irrespective of the content, is beneficial. So is just doing homework, whatever the homework is, beneficial? Doesn't seem like it. So maybe what we need to do is, instead of just figuring out that we got to give them homework, maybe we have to spend more time figuring out what homework to give them. And if we can't figure out what homework to give them, don't give them any. I'll pause there. What are you feeling? What are you thinking right now? Talk to your team.